Welcome to Innovating Clinical Trials, the podcast designed for clinical research professionals eager to deepen their understanding of clinical trials through concise, insightful segments. Join your hosts, Liam Eves and Ted Traffer, as they uncover the core issues in clinical research, reflect on the industry, and challenge conventional wisdom.
Liam, how we doing?
I am incredible. Feeling good, feeling rested. I slept all night.
Wow.
What more could a man ask for?
Yeah, I actually had a good sleep last night, so I'm feeling fired up this morning, excited to talk. I actually picked a topic based on something that happened a few weeks ago, and I've been meaning to talk to you about it. But a few weeks ago, there was this lunar eclipse, and it was supposed to be they called it the blood moon. Did you hear about that? Was it visible in the UK?
Do you know what? I'm not sure. It was a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
It was about a month
Yeah, it
ago,
was a few weeks, like a month ago or so. Yeah, but so my wife told me about it, and I thought, well, this might be pretty cool because blood moon. It's supposed to be this scarlet red. I thought, that'd be pretty cool. And so I set my alarm for 5 a.m. And it, as a wildlife photographer, I've got the gear to take pictures of the moon, super telephoto lens for my camera, tripod. Where I live, there's minimal light pollution, so really ideal setup. So night before I gathered all my gear together, the photography gear and my cold weather gear, because it was still very much in the dead of winter at that time. Yeah. And my alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, and I make my coffee, put on my gear, grab the camera, head outside. And the eclipse itself is already very much underway, but it was supposed to reach totality, close to 6 a.m. So I started hunting around for the perfect location for the spot and found that set up, and just sat there sipping my coffee in the cold and waited. And I took some test shots, back to my coffee. And as the eclipse approached totality, I started readying the camera, but instead of turning red, it just got darker, and disappeared from view. And honestly, it was so underwhelming. The moon wasn't crimson red. It was barely tinted. It was dark. A thin layer of clouds got in the way, so I couldn't really even focus on the moon. And the photos that resulted, they're not going to win any awards for sure. So I packed up my gear, went back inside, grabbed another cup of coffee, and I was rather, I'd say, irritated. and of course, that irritation got me thinking about clinical trial sites.
Right.
And clinical trial sites, they plan, they prepare, they get up early, they stay late, but sometimes things start happening that are just irritating. Study training that's too long, systems don't work properly, tools that create more work instead of saving time. And individually, these things seem small. But as they pile up, those irritations actually become impediments. And the momentum at the site fades, sites start tuning out. And once a site shifts its attention away from a study, it is really difficult to get it back and get the momentum back. So, just like my eclipse photo, sometimes the moment's gone before anyone realizes it. And do you ever see this happen where sites withdraw?
Oh yeah, I think it's probably it's a very deeply psychological principle, right? For anything, is that if you're just constantly getting hit by what feels like failure, is how do you re-energize yourself and also as a leader, people around you to feel like, okay, there is a sense, it's going to get better and so on and so forth. And I've often wondered, Ted, whether this is is this a function of expectations. Like, we all know that, like, how many trials have you worked on that have like just gone straight and smooth? There's very few, right? Yet our expectation is almost like, is this next one going to be? And I wonder whether it's the level of expectations we have on ourselves that then make it frustrating.
Well, I think so much effort and planning goes into a clinical trial. That's an excellent point, because I think when you put effort into something and you plan and you prepare, the expectation is that planning, that preparation, those processes, that they're actually going to help things go well.
Yeah.
So that's a great point, because how much do we actually prepare for the things when they're not going well?
Yeah. And also, I think that, like, I've always, what they say, that I think there's two quotes. I think the military use every no plan survives first contact.
Right, first contact.
And then Mike Tyson's famous one, if I think it was him at least, that everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. and I think the idea of planning is so useful for the thinking part of it, in which that, okay, you know, we're going to follow this particular path, we're hoping that this works. But I wonder how much of that is every single one of those process points can fail. So considering how complex it is, the work that we do, it's going to fail, right? It has to, because even if each process point within that plan has a 90% accuracy, if you've got 200 of those, your overall process has no percent accuracy, because you're stacking one process over the other. Something's will fail inevitably. So I wonder whether the plans are super helpful, but it's a question of, like, that red team thinking, where you say, where is this going to fail and likely to fail? And then what is the thinking around that? And I think sites can do that massively. Like, you know, okay, this is the plan that we've been given. Where do we know, based upon past experience, that it's likely to fail? And how do we do what we can to prepare for that if it does happen? But equally, it allows that expectation to be reset, to say these things could go wrong, and therefore we're prepared for them.
Yeah, what are we going to do? How are we going to, do we actually have an execution path and an escalation path? So the escalation path, as far as getting help, how early do we reach out, or do we sit there and try and muddle through it ourselves and suffer?
Absolutely.
Or if we're not getting clear, concise communication in return about resolutions, at the start of a study, do we have a path of escalation? Do we already know who to reach out to that can help move things forward? And, or is the site limited where they've just got their CRA as a contact and that's it?
Yeah. And I think it's like an acceptance of those things, right? Is to say, you know, so I think, what is it, the Marcus Aurelius, the obstacle is the way, almost, the Ryan Holiday, is that, like, these problems that then roll in our path, they do become the way. They are the only, you have to remove them in order to go through them. And I think that a lot of times the way I've dealt with it from a leadership perspective is to ensure that we're aware that things will go wrong. It will inevitably happen. And we have to be, which I think a lot of sites are, extremely nimble and you know, reactive to the problems. But there's a question before that, which is, how are we proactively solving, or trying to at least alert maybe groups that there are problems? And like, a really good method that I've used in the past with groups, both my own or other organizations, is that you have you have a post-mortem, you look back and you say, okay, what was everything that went wrong? You actually have a pre-mortem, and you say, okay, like, of all the things that we know, like, where is this likely to go wrong? And you are able, to then at least set a tone. So when it does happen, or when something does happen, you can at least go as a leader and say to your team, well, listen, we knew this was going to happen, or we knew something like this was going to happen. What are we going to do now?
Right. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for, again, we've just kind of scratched the surface on this today, but really appreciate your perspective on this. It made me think of a lot of ideas. So yeah,
we'll have
more topics for podcasts coming.
Yeah, that's the other problem with these things. We start to have a bit of an explore,
awesome.
And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's far more underneath the surface of this, which is great.
Yeah, no, it went in a direction that I hadn't been thinking. That's why these conversations are so valuable.
Yeah.
Because getting, more than one person diving in and generating ideas. I mean, these are the conversations that need to be had more and more.
Yeah, and on that point, Ted, I think that, like, one of the things that is one of the reasons why obviously we started this podcast was just simply because of that, right? Is that we were having conversations and, like, both learning from one another as being, like, veterans in this space, and still, like, so much to learn and so much to different perspectives. And it's like, I've had a couple of conversations over the last couple of weeks with people who I wouldn't typically speak to in a day-to-day basis, and it's just like a different perspective, and you go, oh my god, that's unlocked. I wish like loads of people could hear the conversation that we just had, and
right.
I think encouraging people to have chats with different perspectives, I think is wonderful.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for this today.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good day.